Hello everybody and welcome back to Magic Stew. I am Kyle. Joining me yet again is the illustrious Liam Duffy. Today we're bringing you something that's really exciting called Hotseat. With hot coffee as well. Liam has very graciously made some lovely French press. Cheers, sir. And we are going to be drinking this hot coffee while giving you some hot takes on Ixalan's most controversial cards. I'm talking, of course, about some of the set's most interesting and most intriguing uncommons. Now, you'll get a lot of limited analysis on things like bomb rares or really good staple commons, but not a lot of talk is paid to the uncommons. So that's what we're going to be doing today. Hopefully you will use some of the tips and tricks we give you here to become a better drafter. So the way this is going to work, each episode we are going to do five uncommons that I have not seen yet. I don't know which ones Liam has selected. He has taken them at random. I'm going to flip them up. I'm going to explain what the card does, and then I'm going to give it a rating from 1 to 5. 5 is an absolute bomb. It's an auto include in most decks, or automatically worth splashing in most decks, somewhere along the lines of Vraska. So it's a little hard for uncommons to be in the 5 range, but there are a couple that I would consider 5s, and 1 is absolutely unplayable or garbage unplayable. If I'm really mean and nasty, I might give it a 0.5. I might give it a 0, but 1 to 5 is generally where our range is going to be. So without further ado, let's get started with the hot seat.
So I've pulled 8 cards, of which Kyle is going to shuffle them and
pick 5.
Pick 5. We might do a couple more if time allows. Depends on how fast we get through the initial 5.
Oh man, all right.
There's a sleeve in there.
Show everybody else. One of these is sleeved. I don't know what's in the sleeve. It could be a foil. It could be a non-foil. Liam could just be deciding to throw me a big about for a loop. We're just going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I did get the foiled one. Let's start off, ladies and gentlemen, with our first one, which is Air Elemental. This card is 3 colorless, 2 blue for a 4/4 flyer, and I have to say, it's a great way to start off our hot seat conversation because a card like this is an absolute game ender. I absolutely love the card, and I'm going to have to give it a 4. Now, Ixalan is a pretty fast, limited set. It's a set that's ruled by 2-drops and combat tricks, but that being said, flyers are at a pretty good premium, removal is pretty bad. So a 5-mana 4/4 flyer is going to be able to close out the game most times. I'm going to rank it at a solid 4 if you're in blue and you need a good finisher, or if you're finding yourself in need of a good evasive threat. I mean, it's great on blocking, great on attacking, solid stats, great mana cost. Got to give it a 4. Shout out to Air Elemental. Shout out to Owen, who is crying out of joy at Air Elemental. Owen, what is up, buddy? What is up? You want to say hi to the camera?
No. Say hi, everybody.
Everybody, this is Owen. Owen
say
is our
hi.
co-pilot.
Say hi.
Owen, what do you think of Air Elemental? No?
No.
Okay, it gets a 4 from me and a no from Owen. That's important to note when you're drafting.
Owen, what do you say when there's a camera?
Hi everybody, my name's Owen and I really like Magic Stew. You should like, comment, and subscribe.
Well said, Owen. Well said. All right, buddy. Back down. Ooh.
We're back and we're still on Air Elemental, and I just wanted to say that I, for one, am really thrilled that they reprinted the Air Elemental. I kind of wish that they had gone and done a few more of the others from the original group of 4 elementals. In particular, Fire Elemental was one of my favorites. I remember having a blue and red elemental deck that people just wouldn't even play against for the longest time.
This was a big part too of the original promotional learn how to play games. So 8-year-old Kyle lost a lot of games to Air Elemental. It's not as good as it was back in 7th edition, but it's still pretty good now. Still definitely worth a 4 in terms of limited. Now we're going to move on to our next card. Our next card is Sheltering Light, which is actually a pretty interesting one. So it's 1 white mana for an instant that says target creature gains indestructible and scry 1. I absolutely love this card. Seriously, this card is great. So this set, as we talked about, is ruled by cheap combat tricks, cheap removal, and cheap creatures. And having the ability to protect one of your guys from removal for literally 1 mana and instant speed and fix your draws with Scry is excellent. This card works really well if you're trying to dodge things like Pious Interdiction or Ixalan's Binding, which is sorcery speed removal. The same thing with Fire Cannon Blast. It's excellent if your opponent has a better combat trick for you. So if they play Vampire's Zeal or something of the like, or Riverkeeper's Boon, something like that, you can use this to protect your creature from dying on defense or on offense, which is great. Again, this fixes your draws. All that said, it slices, it dices, it's cheap, it's instant speed. It gets Sheltering Light a 3.5. There's really not much to say about this card. I mean, this is basically a functional reprint of, God's Willing from the Theros block, which was a pretty high pick anyway for those of you who played in Theros. But I'm going to give Sheltering Light a 3.5. Liam, have you played against Sheltering Light? I have played with Sheltering Light, and it is awesome. I put against it a couple times too, and it's been very annoying. So 3.5 for sure. All right, now, it's a foil Unclaimed Territory. So Unclaimed Territory, for those of you who are unfamiliar, it's a land. As it enters the battlefield, you select a creature type. You can tap it to add a colorless mana to your mana pool, or you can add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool, but that can only be used to cast cards of that creature type. In Limited, in Constructed, this card is phenomenal. And there's also, I give the foiling on this card. Just gonna hold that as close as possible.
Let's focus on
look
that here.
Look how beautiful that is.
Gosh.
Ooh,
Yeah.
special. Very special. Upside down, it looks pretty too. I give the foiling on this card a 5, but in Limited, this card's probably a 1.5 or pretty close to there. You're not often going to get as many cards of a certain tribe. Most of the time, you're just going to want a colored mana anyway, a forest or a mountain or swamp, something of that like to cast those cards. If you're lucky and you wind up with like 15 creatures, all of the same creature type, then sure, Unclaimed Territory might find a place in your deck. I think the most of a certain creature type I wound up drafting a pirate deck with like 14 pirates in it. But for the most part, although I might be in a certain tribe and be drafting towards those synergies, I don't ever really wind up with more than 6 to 8 of a certain card. So certainly Unclaimed Territory, very cool looking foil, very excellent in Standard, but in Limited, I rank it at a 1.5. So it's going to go right down there on the table. Now, for our next one. Deadeye Plunderers. This is a phenomenal one. So first things first, Deadeye Plunderers is 5 mana, 3 colorless, 1 blue, 1 black for a 3/3 human pirate. Deadeye Plunderers gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control, and then its activated ability is 4 mana, 2 colorless, 1 blue, and 1 black. Create a colorless treasure artifact token. With sacrifice this artifact, add 1 mana to your mana pool. This is a 4, maybe even a 4.5 if you were in the right archetypes. So something that I've found, and I don't know if you've necessarily noticed this as well, but I know a couple of the pros have talked about this, particularly Marshall Sutcliffe from Limited Resources has mentioned that Pirates feels either like a blue-black deck or a red-black deck. The blue-red Pirates deck hasn't really come together a whole lot, and the Grixis one hasn't really come together a lot. So if you are in the blue-black Pirate deck, this card is phenomenal. First things first, if you have any treasures to start with, this might actually be bigger than a 3/3. This is a mana sink in a set that is very light on mana sinks, which means at your opponent's end step, you can make a treasure for 4 mana that you can use later on in your next previous turn. If they attack him with a 3/3 and they're tapped out, you can block with your 3/3, tap 4 mana. This is suddenly a 4/4, so now you've eaten a creature and you've gotten an extra treasure counter. It makes combat a nightmare for your opponent. It fixes and accelerates your mana. It's a threat in and of itself, and as I mentioned before, it fits into one of the better pirate archetypes. So I have to say, this is a 4, easily a 4, maybe even a 4.5 if you're able to sort of draft around this card. It also synergizes well with other cards in the blue-black Pirates deck. Something like Desperate Castaways, for example, is another excellent one. And if you're lucky enough to get this and the Revel and Riches combo in Limited, then you've officially lived the dream. You're officially swimming in pirate booty. So Deadeye Plunderers gets a 4, even a 4.5 if you're able to build around it effectively. I have not had a chance to play with this card yet. I have played against it a couple times, and every single time it's been an absolute nightmare for me to deal with. I do not like playing against him. I want one of these on my own. I want it.
Yeah.
I want it.
As Kyle's right, as far as mana sinks go, you've either got some very light mana sinks and not very many of them.
No.
Or you've got those 1-drop creatures that you can sink 8, and that seems ridiculous to me. And here we are with 4. That's right in the middle. Yeah. Just enough to make it worthwhile. If you are late in the game, you might get a couple of them.
It's a strong card. Honestly, the thing that it reminds me the most of, and we might encounter it later, I don't know, the other uncommon, which is Shapers of Nature. But again, 4, 4.5, for sure. Easily as strong as the Air Elemental, although I don't know which one of those I would first pick in the draft. Probably the Elemental. Now, our final hot seat card. Grim Captain's Call. 3 mana, 2 colorless, and 1 black for a sorcery. It says return a pirate card from your graveyard to your hand, then do the same for vampire, dinosaur, and merfolk. Oh man, I want this card to do really, really well. Like, the first time I saw this, I was like, this is the sweetest thing on this entire planet, and it just has not performed for me. I have tried to get this thing to work for the life of me, and I cannot get it to. I think that sort of pie-in-the-sky dream of a 4 tribal deck, maybe it will come together in Rivals of Ixalan, maybe not. Most of the time, this is just 3 mana for what is essentially a Return Dead, which is not a very good card. For example, the gosh, what is it? The 1-mana common that returns either 1 creature from your graveyard to your hand or 2 pirates from your graveyard to your hand is almost consistently better than Grim Captain's Call. The only time that I've had Grim Captain's Call be successful is when I'm playing a black-white strategy or a black-red strategy, maybe even black-blue. Because sometimes you can get a couple vampire, like you can get a vampire and a pirate in some of those archetypes. Like I'll draft like a Queen Scout or whatever it is, the 6-mana 3/3 with Explore Vampire in some of those decks, and you'll wind up getting that back in a Desperate Castaways or something along those lines. But for the most part, Grim Captain's Call is very, very underwhelming. I rank it at a 1.5. It is just not that good. It gets outperformed by the common with the same ability. You're never always going to be able to get that sort of, again, pie in the sky dream of returning 5 creatures to your graveyard. It hasn't happened. It's too slow in a set that's dominated by speed and synergy, so Grim Captain's Call gets a 1.5. I actually think it maybe even a 1. I think Unclaimed Territory has more upside than Grim Captain's Call generally, which
I feel like that's a little too expensive to be so conditional.
if it was instant speed, it'd be awesome. I mean, it wouldn't be awesome,
Absolutely.
but it would definitely bump it from
It'd
like
be better.
from a 1 to like
It'd
a
be better.
2.5. This was instant speed. I would absolutely play Grim Captain's Call. Like you play the blue-black Pirates control deck, you make a couple blocks. They either you trade with a few creatures, maybe you get blown out by a few combat strikes.
Before the end of their turn,
Right,
you
you're
pop
like,
it back
okay,
into your
cool.
hand.
End step, bring back a cheap pirate, bring back a cheap vampire, replay my guys, and we're
And
back
your
to
turn, yes.
and we're back to the races.
Second main.
But at sorcery speed for 3 mana, unable to get multiple creature types to use this sort of effectively, I have to say Grim Captain's Call gets a 1.5 from me. Well, folks, that is our 5 cards for this episode of Hot Seat. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Please talk to us in the comments. Tell me that I'm wrong. Call me bald. Can you see the future in my head? I've been told that I have a very shiny bald head, so I'm not sure about that. But seriously, please talk to us in the comments. If you like this video, be sure to subscribe to Magic Stew for all of the cool Man TG content. Subscribe to Owen on all of his social medias, on his MySpace and his AOL Instant Messenger, all of that wonderful jazz. And until next time, folks, I'm Kyle Ott. This is Liam Duffy. We'll see you next time.